Welcome, everyone. We have a massive story unfolding in the world of professional tennis today, one that bridges a gap between a stunning Cinderella sports narrative and a shocking breakdown in event management and fan safety. If you have been following the 2026 Berlin Open, officially known on the WTA Tour as the Ecotrans Ladies Open, you already know that this year's tournament on the pristine grass courts of the Steffi Graf Stadion has been absolutely electric. It was supposed to be a standard high-level warm-up event for Wimbledon, a place for top-tier players to find their footing on the slick grass. But instead, it became a battleground of unexpected upsets, severe weather anomalies, and a public relations catastrophe that has left the tennis community outraged. Today, we are unpacking the dramatic saga that is dominating the sports headlines. No Alex, Eala, no crowd? Berlin Open final faces unexpected fan backlash. To understand the sheer scale of the backlash and the strangely empty, chaotic atmosphere of the championship match, we first have to talk about the player who single-handedly electrified the tournament and brought an unprecedented wave of global attention to Berlin. I am talking, of course, about the 21-year-old Filipina sensation, Alexandra Eala. Entering the tournament as a wild card, Eala embarked on a giant slaying run that captured the hearts of fans worldwide. She didn't just win matches. She systematically dismantled some of the biggest names in the sport, including former Queen's Club champion Donna Vekic, the world number 2 Elena Rybakina, and the fiercely competitive world number 8 Alina Svitolina. Eala's breathtaking performances brought a massive, passionate fan base to the stands, transforming the typically reserved Berlin crowd into a roaring sea of support. But as the script of sports so often dictates, the fairy tale was abruptly cut short in the semifinals when Eala faced the incredibly focused and clinical Czech player Linda Noskova, who defeated the Filipina star in straight sets. With Eala out of the picture, the emotional balloon of the tournament had been somewhat deflated. Fans were still gearing up for what promised to be a spectacular final between Noskova and the world number 3, American Jessica Pegula. But the narrative quickly shifted from the absence of the tournament's breakout star to the literal, forceful removal of the entire crowd. Hours before the scheduled afternoon final, a terrifying, hyper-intense summer storm suddenly descended upon the Steffi Graf Stadion. We are talking about torrential downpours, ferocious winds, and dangerous lightning strikes, a sudden supercell that seemingly caught the tournament organizers completely off guard. What followed was not a calm, orderly delay, but a shocking scene of chaos and panic. Rather than directing paying patrons, including families with young children and elderly tennis fans, to designated indoor shelters, security personnel reportedly engaged in aggressive, heavy-handed tactics to forcefully evacuate the entire grounds. Social media instantly exploded with horrific eyewitness accounts of fans being pushed, yelled at, and shoved directly into the eye of the brutal storm. The backlash was instantaneous and severe. People were left stranded in the freezing, torrential rain outside the gates, furious at the sheer incompetence and alleged physical hostility of the event staff. The highly anticipated final between Pegula and Noskova was severely delayed, the grounds were closed, and the organizers were forced to issue a highly scrutinized, somewhat tone-deaf apology regarding the inappropriate behavior of their security teams. This isn't just a story about a delayed tennis match. It is a profound look at event mismanagement, the duty of care that organizers owe to their ticket holders, and the fragile ecosystem of a professional sports event when the unexpected strikes. Today, we are going to dive deep into every single aspect of this fiasco. We will analyze Alex Eala's historic run and the emotional vacuum her exit created, break down the timeline of the extreme weather event, scrutinize the appalling evacuation procedures, and evaluate the WTA and the tournament's official response. Grab a drink, settle in, and let's get into the comprehensive deep dive of the 2026 Berlin Open disaster. Let's begin this extensive analysis by winding the clock back to the start of the week, because you simply cannot grasp the magnitude of the weekend's disappointment without first understanding the dizzying heights of the days leading up to it. The 2026 Berlin Open was poised to be a battleground for the established elite. You had Aryna Sabalenka, Elena Rybakina, Jessica Pegula, the absolute titans of the women's game. But professional tennis is a sport that thrives on disruption, and that disruption arrived in the form of Alexandra Eala. Eala, sitting around number 35 in the world rankings at the start of the week, had already proven her mettle by capturing the Birmingham Open title earlier in the month. She was finding her footing on grass, a surface that notoriously takes years to master. But no one, not even the most optimistic pundits, could have predicted the sheer devastation she would unleash on the Berlin draw. Eala's campaign started against Donna Vekic, a player known for her heavy baseline hitting and pedigree on grass. Eala managed to outmaneuver Vekic, taking the match 7-5, 6-4. It was an impressive win, but it was in a round of 16 where Eala truly shook the foundations of the tennis world. She stepped onto the court against Elena Rybakina, the world number 2 and a former Wimbledon champion. Rybakina's serve is arguably the most lethal weapon in the women's game today, especially on grass, where the ball skids low and fast. Yet, Eala stood at the baseline, absorbing the pace, redirecting the power, and showcasing a tactical brilliance that belied her 21 years. She defeated Rybakina in straight sets, 7-5, 6-4. The tennis world stopped and stared. Eala had not just scraped by. She had dictated play. The Filipino community in Germany and across Europe began flocking to the Steffi Graf Stadion. Eala followed this monumental upset by taking down Alina Svitolina, a veteran fighter and top 10 stalwart, 6-3, 6-4 in the quarterfinals. Eala was playing with a level of joy, precision, and fearlessness that became the central narrative of the entire tournament. However, sports can be incredibly cruel. In the semifinals, Eala met Linda Noskova. The 21-year-old Czech player has been having a quietly phenomenal season herself, and she stepped onto the court against Eala with an ice-cold demeanor. Noskova simply did not allow Eala to dictate the points. With a booming serve and flat, penetrating ground strokes, Noskova dismantled the Filipinas' game plan, winning 2-6, 4-6. During her on-court interview, Noskova plainly stated that she simply felt comfortable, a stark contrast to the emotional roller coaster Eala had been riding. Eala's exit meant the final would not feature the darling of the crowd. While Noskova had rightfully earned her place in the final alongside Jessica Pegula, who had just dispatched Aryna Sabalenka in a thrilling 3-set encounter, the atmosphere in Berlin had noticeably shifted. The no Alex Eala narrative was already brewing. The stadium was preparing for a high-quality tennis match, but the raw, electric buzz that Eala had generated was gone. But as it turned out, the absence of Alex Eala was going to be the least of the tournament's problems. Let us transition to the meteorological nightmare that unfolded on Sunday afternoon. Berlin, during the summer months of June and July, is no stranger to heat waves. And as any meteorologist will tell you, when there are prolonged periods of high heat and humidity in Central Europe, the atmosphere becomes a pressure cooker. The conditions become ripe for sudden, violent thunderstorms. The tournament organizers and the German Weather Service were undoubtedly monitoring the radar. The forecast called for potential rain, but what materialized over the Grunewald Forest area, where the Steffi Graf Stadion is located, was not just a passing shower. It was a vicious supercell. Eyewitnesses described the sky turning a bruised, ominous purple just around midday, hours before Pegula and Noskova were scheduled to take the court. The wind began to howl, whipping through the trees and tearing at the tournament's temporary infrastructure. Then came the deluge. It was a torrential downpour of biblical proportions, accompanied by fierce lightning strikes that posed an immediate and severe threat to anyone out in the open. Now, in the context of major tennis tournaments, rain delays are par for the course. Wimbledon has its multi-million-dollar retractable roofs. The U.S. Open has roofs over its main stadiums. The Berlin Open, however, relies heavily on its outdoor charm. When rain hits an outdoor event, the standard operating procedure is to suspend play, cover the courts with tarps, and allow the spectators to take refuge in designated indoor areas, concourses, sponsored tents, or under grandstand overhangs until the weather passes. This is where the situation in Berlin devolved from a natural weather event into a human-made disaster. Instead of initiating a shelter-in-place protocol or guiding fans to safe zones within the complex, the event organizers made the unprecedented and highly controversial decision to completely evacuate the tournament grounds. They decided to push every single patron outside the gates. Now imagine the scene. You have thousands of fans, many of whom have traveled significant distances, paid premium prices for finals tickets, and spent the morning enjoying the hospitality areas. Suddenly, the skies open up, and instead of being offered a safe haven, they are met by a wall of security personnel ordering them to leave the premises immediately. The accounts that flooded social media platforms like Reddit, Instagram, and Twitter in the aftermath were nothing short of horrifying. Attendees reported that the evacuation was completely devoid of organization or empathy. The security staff, clearly overwhelmed and perhaps poorly briefed on emergency protocols, allegedly resorted to brute force and intimidation. Fans described being yelled at aggressively. More disturbingly, there were widespread reports of security personnel physically manhandling attendees, including elderly fans who could not move quickly enough and families desperately trying to keep their small children safe and dry. People were literally pushed out of the tournament gates and directly into the teeth of a storm. Let us pause to truly analyze the absurdity and the danger of this protocol. The organizers pushed their paying customers out into an open street during a severe lightning storm with gale force winds. The spectators were left standing on the pavements, huddled under trees, which is the absolute worst place to be during a lightning storm, or sprinting to find shelter in nearby residential neighborhoods and subway stations. The storm itself, while incredibly intense, only lasted for about 20 to 25 minutes. It was a rapid, violent squall. Had the tournament provided basic shelter points, the fans could have waited out the storm safely and comfortably. Instead, the organizers created a situation of mass panic, exposing their attendees to far greater risk of injury from slipping, crushing, or lightning strikes than if they had simply been allowed to remain under the stadium's structural overhangs. The immediate aftermath was a ghost town at the venue and an absolute firestorm online. While the rain subsided and the groundskeeping crew heroically began the arduous task of repairing the damaged infrastructure, pumping out standing water, and drying the grass courts, the fans who had been subjected to the chaotic evacuation were left fuming. Many simply went home, disgusted by their treatment. The tournament's social media channels became a focal point for the outrage. The official Berlin Open Instagram account posted a series of updates, initially stating that they were forced to clear the grounds as a precautionary measure and asking fans not to travel to the venue. But as the testimonies of security abuse multiplied in the comments section, the organizers were forced to address the elephant in the room. The statement they issued is a masterclass in corporate doublespeak and PR deflection. Let me break down their official apology. They stated, "If any individual members of the security staff behaved inappropriately during the evacuation, we would like to sincerely apologize. Our primary focus was to clear the grounds as quickly and safely as possible." Look closely at the language used there. If any individual members. This is the classic conditional apology. It refuses to acknowledge the systemic failure of their evacuation plan, and instead attempts to shift the blame onto the hypothetical actions of a few rogue security guards. It invalidates the lived experiences of hundreds of fans who reported widespread, coordinated aggression from the staff. Furthermore, their claim that their focus was to clear the ground safely is entirely contradictory to the fact that they pushed people into an active, dangerous storm without providing any safe alternatives. This brings us to a much larger conversation about the commodification of the tennis fan experience and the stark contrast between the treatment of VIPs and the general public. Professional tennis at the WDA 500 level is a luxury product. Tickets are expensive. The sponsors are high-end brands. The entire aesthetic of the grass court swing is one of elegance, strawberries and cream, and polite applause. Yet, the moment a logistical challenge arose, the veneer of luxury vanished, and the general admission fans were treated like a nuisance to be physically removed. It highlights a glaring lack of contingency planning. How does a major sporting event in Central Europe during thunderstorm season not have an adequate shelter-in-place protocol? How is a default emergency response to lock the gates and leave the public to fend for themselves on the street? As the afternoon dragged on, the uncertainty lingered. Would the final even be played? Jessica Pegula and Linda Noskova were left waiting in the locker rooms for hours, their pre-match routines entirely destroyed. For a professional athlete, this kind of delay is incredibly taxing. You warm up, you get the adrenaline flowing, and then you are told to sit down and wait, and wait, and wait. Finally, after 5:30 in the evening, more than 5 hours after the scheduled start time, the gates were cautiously reopened, but the damage had been done. The stands, which were supposed to be packed to the rafters for a marquee final, were tragically sparse. Many fans who had been driven away by the storm and the hostile security simply chose not to return. The atmosphere was flat, damp, and exhausted. Despite the terrible circumstances surrounding the match, the tennis itself deserves our attention. When Pegula and Noskova finally stepped onto the damp grass, they deliver a highly competitive, grueling 3-set battle. Noskova, showing an incredible level of mental fortitude for a 21-year-old dealing with such bizarre circumstances, took the first set 6-4. Pegula, the seasoned veteran and a master of tactical adjustments, fought back to take the second set 6-4. But in the deciding set, Noskova found another gear. Her heavy hitting cut through the heavy, humid air, and she overpowered the American to take the final set 6-2, securing her first-ever grass court title and catapulting herself to a career-high ranking of world number 10. Noskova's victory is a phenomenal achievement. She remained unbroken, unfazed, and absolutely locked in throughout a week that tested the patience and resolve of everyone involved. For Pegula, it was a tough loss after a brilliant week where she conquered her demon in Aryna Sabalenka, but it proved that she is in fantastic form heading into Wimbledon. And we cannot forget Eala, who, despite not making the final, was the undisputed star of the week. Her spectacular run earned her 195 WTA ranking points, nearly 60,000 euros in prize money, and elevated her world ranking into the top 30. She has officially announced herself as a major threat on the WTA Tour, and the entire tennis world will be watching her highly anticipated debut at Wimbledon. However, as the sun set on the Steffi Graf Stadium and the trophy was hoisted into the twilight sky, the lingering taste of the 2026 Berlin Open was undeniably bitter. The tournament organizers have serious questions to answer. The WTA needs to launch a full investigation into the safety protocols and the conduct of the event staff. You cannot have a premier sporting event where the paying public is subjected to physical force and exposed to dangerous weather conditions due to a lack of planning. The fans are the lifeblood of this sport. They are the ones buying the tickets, purchasing the merchandise, and creating the atmosphere that makes these tournaments special. If they feel unsafe, if they feel disrespected, they simply will not return. This incident should serve as a massive wake-up call to tournament directors across the globe. Climate change is leading to more erratic and severe weather patterns. Sudden supercells and extreme heat are going to become more frequent, not less. Relying on good luck and clear skies is no longer a viable operational strategy. Every single tournament, regardless of its size, must have robust, humane, and clearly communicated emergency shelter protocols. Security staff must be trained in crowd management and de-escalation, not just forceful crowd dispersal. When a crisis hits, the priority must be the actual safety and well-being of the human beings on the grounds, not merely clearing the physical space to avoid hypothetical liability. The no Alex Eala, no crowd narrative began as a testament to one player's massive popularity, but ended as a dark indictment of tournament management. The empty seats during the trophy presentation were a silent protest by a fan base that had been pushed too far. The Berlin Open survived the storm, and it crowned a worthy champion in Linda Noskova, but its reputation has suffered severe blow. It will take a lot of transparency, genuine accountability, and concrete changes in infrastructure and protocol to rebuild the trust that was washed away in the Grunewald rain. As we bring this extensive deep dive to a close, we have to look at the massive ripple effects that this unforgettable weekend in Berlin will have on the rest of the tennis season. The grass court swing is brutally short. It is a mad dash from the clay of Roland Garros to the manicured lawns of the All England Club, and tournaments like the Berlin Open are crucial stepping stones. From a purely athletic standpoint, we learned a tremendous amount over the past week. We learned that Linda Noskova is no longer just a promising young talent. She is a certified top 10 force who has figured out how to translate her lethal power to the most nuanced surface in the sport. Her ability to stay mentally locked in during a 5-hour weather delay and a chaotic, empty stadium environment proves that she has the psychological fortitude of a Grand Slam champion in the making. We also learned that Jessica Pegula remains one of the most consistent and dangerous competitors on the tour. Her victory over Aryna Sabalenka earlier in the tournament was a tactical masterclass, and pushing the final to 3 grueling sets under miserable conditions shows her incredible resilience. But perhaps the most exciting athletic takeaway from Berlin is the meteoric rise of Alexandra Eala. The young Filipina captured the imagination of the tennis world. Her flawless technique, her fearless shot-making against the world's best, and the sheer joy she brings to the court have injected a massive dose of excitement into the WTA Tour. Breaking into the top 30 is a monumental milestone, and Eala is carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire nation on her shoulders as she heads toward Wimbledon. The tennis landscape is shifting, and these young stars are aggressively demanding their place at the top table. But beyond the forehands, the backhands, and the ranking points, the legacy of the 2026 Berlin Open will undoubtedly be the catastrophic mishandling of its fans. This tournament will be studied in sports management classes as a textbook example of what not to do during a weather emergency. The images of families huddled in the pouring rain, pushed out of the gates by aggressive security personnel, are a stain on the prestige of the event. The organizers' half-hearted, conditional apology only added insult to injury, demonstrating a shocking lack of empathy and accountability. It is incredibly disheartening when the administrative and logistical side of the sport fails the very people who fund it and support it. Going forward, the WTA has a profound responsibility to step in and ensure that this never happens again. There must be strict, uncompromising mandates for all tour events regarding emergency weather shelters. A tournament simply cannot be sanctioned if its only contingency plan for a lightning storm is to lock the public out on the street. Security protocols must prioritize human safety and clear, calm communication over brute force. If tennis wants to continue growing its global audience and maintaining its status as a premium entertainment product, it cannot treat its fans as disposable commodities the moment the sky turns gray. The fans who traveled to Berlin, who bought the tickets, who cheered for Eala, who waited in the rain, they deserve better. They deserve the basic dignity of a safe shelter. The empty stands during the final between Noskova and Pegula should serve as a haunting reminder to organizers everywhere. Without the crowd, the spectacle is nothing but a hollow exhibition. The energy, the drama, and the financial lifeblood of professional sports depend entirely on the people in the seats. If you lose their trust, you lose the soul of the event. Thank you so much for joining me for this comprehensive breakdown of the dramatic and controversial 2026 Berlin Open. I want to hear your thoughts on everything we have discussed today. If you were at the tournament and experienced the evacuation firsthand, please share your story in the comments below. What do you think the WTA should do in response to the organizers' actions? And looking to the tennis side of things, how far do you think Alex Eala can go at Wimbledon this year? And is Linda Noskova a dark horse for the major title? Drop your predictions and opinions in the comment section. If you appreciated this deep dive analysis, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. Make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our extensive coverage of the biggest stories, controversies, and triumphs in the world of sports. We pride ourselves on going beyond the surface-level headlines to bring you the full, unvarnished context of what is happening behind the scenes. Until next time, keep watching, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next video. Stay safe, everyone.